Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining today's Fountain webinar. The more you linked in, the more you get out. My name is Chris Reeve. I'm the social media manager here at Fountain, and I'll be your host for today. In this session, our speakers will be talking you through tried and tested methods to increase your leads and sales figures using LinkedIn's extensive organic search and paid targeting techniques. These same techniques led to a $45 million exit and over $20 million in sales in 6 months. If you are like most B2B businesses, then you'll be aware of how digital channels are becoming a more integrated part of marketing and sales. The drop in face-to-face sales brought by 2020 and the influx in online activity from your potential clients means that adopting these digital channels is now more important than ever. You may, however, be overwhelmed at having to start and optimize whole new channels that you are not familiar with or unaware of the latest strategies. This webinar will give you the latest knowledge and proven strategies that you need to get started. Our first speaker will be the lovely James Potter, otherwise known as the LinkedIn Man. What a perfect guest to have on today. With over 12 years training people to use LinkedIn, he is a leading provider of sales and commercial LinkedIn training and consultancy for businesses trying to make more sales and make LinkedIn work for them, and has helped over 130 private limited companies across more than 70 countries. Wow, that's some record there, James. Since he started using LinkedIn in corporate life as a sales director, it's enabled him to build new relationships, reminding clients of breadth of value and get engagements worth over £10 million in sales in his first 6 years alone. And of course, today our second speaker is the lovely David Cooper, aka Deco here at Fountain. He's the marketing manager working at the forefront of digital marketing as part of the Fountain team. He has built on the success he's delivered for clients to give keynote speeches at Google HQ, in Canada's largest marketing conference on artificial intelligence and forecasting performance. Having taken on the new role of marketing manager here at Fountain, he is now applying his international award-nominated account experience to lead Fountain's own marketing. There should be a lot to take away from all of this, so if you have any questions at all, please do get them in on the chat box on the right of the video stream, ideally with the name of the person you are directing the question at. At the end, I'll then field these questions to our speakers and we'll be having an open discussion at the end as well. I hope you all enjoy it. I'm personally really looking forward to learning lots. And without further ado, I will hand you over to James, the LinkedIn Man.
Morning, everybody. I want to start by talking about the thing that everybody thinks LinkedIn is. Most times when I start talking to companies, they go, we're doing recruitment, James. And I go, brilliant. I don't teach people recruitment. But when you talk about the industries on LinkedIn, there is a perception that recruitment will always be a large part of it, where in fact, recruitment is tiny. Globally, it is only the 60th largest business in the world. And it's also one of the few shrinking industries on LinkedIn globally year on year. If you were to look at the top 3 industries right now, they're construction, hospitals, and IT. Coming at 4th, you've got retail. In the top 10, you've got things like accountants and governments. Even marketing companies are the 10th largest industry. And it often surprises people because we have this perception of what we think LinkedIn is. We think it's this very formal, business-like place. And we get on it and we be terribly formal and business-like. And it fascinates me because when I go looking at people's profiles, I meet these terribly formal, business-like people. But when I meet the people, they're actually nice people, and they've got personality and they've got style. And it fascinates me because when we looked at the last 15,500 profiles on LinkedIn, 86% of people left their personality out. And it's quite interesting because if you stop and think about what makes you different, what makes you stand out. Let's imagine for a moment you're in a marketing function. There's only 310,000 people in the UK with a marketing or branding job title. So what makes you different? Well, it's you. I'm sorry, I can't make it any prettier than that, but it's you. Your personality, your style, your outlook, your belief, your behavior, your values. So why do only 14% of people write that in their profile? Because they don't stop and think about it. Making LinkedIn work is having a good profile that looks like you, talking to people like you talk to people. In real life, you don't go around sharing content with people. You know, if I bump into you at a conference or a convention, I don't go, can I give you some content? I talk to you. So why on LinkedIn do people go on and share content and like things? It's weird. It's not very human. You know, you connect with people and then you send them messages to say, buy my things. And sometimes they might say yes. And sometimes they might flag you as spam. It'd be much easier on LinkedIn if you started by looking at the people that your real network already know. Because LinkedIn does that really, really well. You can jump on LinkedIn, free LinkedIn, and say, LinkedIn, find me all the people that I'd really like to have a conversation with that my network already know. And it'll go, yeah, no problem, we'll deliver that to you on an email. And every week you can look at all the people you could easily get introduced to or referred to through the people that you really know. Suddenly this business development stuff becomes really easy. But first thing they're going to do is look at your profile. So that's got to be good. They're going to look at what you've been talking about, because people are getting quite clever on LinkedIn now. They don't take profiles at face value. They want to find out if you talk about the very things that you say you do. They start looking at those endorsements, that game that people play with endorsements. Who'd have thought that procurement people will phone the people that have endorsed you to find out if you're good at that skill? Yeah, they do. Not everybody is using LinkedIn in the way that you might think they use it. We've trained spies how to use LinkedIn. We teach corporate espionage to corporate clients, how to find out things about you, your relationships, your business. It's all there on LinkedIn to see. Car finance companies are doing credit checks on you. One of my favorite quotes from a client ever was a client saying it was harder to fake a good LinkedIn profile than to buy a driving license. LinkedIn's used to see if you're a risk, to see if you're a good person, to see if you are the sort of business that someone wants to buy. People are coming to us and saying, James, we're thinking about buying that company. Can you tell us what the board are like? Finance companies are looking at your profiles for credit checks. Insurance companies are looking at your profiles if you're a risk. We've all looked at profiles on LinkedIn of people that we're told are good. And when you've looked at them, you've gone, oh, that wasn't what I expected. So when you get away from listening to this, you might want to have a little look at your own profile. See if your personality's in it. See if you're talking to people on LinkedIn, as opposed to perhaps shouting at them or just sharing content with them. LinkedIn doesn't mind if you share a website link, a video, you write in the box, a photograph. All content is treated the same way. But when you think about what you interact with on LinkedIn, you interact probably with the people that you know. You interact with the posts that you can relate to, that are empathetic, that are human. So think about what you've been posting on LinkedIn. See if you can make that a little bit more human, a little bit more relatable, and you'll find people will start interacting with it more. And the interaction on LinkedIn is as important as any algorithm on LinkedIn. Don't get hung up about an algorithm. Get hung up about being you, and the more like you can be, the better it will work. If you do one other thing when you go away from this podcast, do me a personal favor. Copy all of your LinkedIn profile and drop it into your word processor of choice. Spellings on LinkedIn will always cheer me up. I went checking before I started this. 4.59 million CEOs globally, 188,000 CEOs in the UK, and yet more than 4,000 CEOs can't spell CEO. They're never going to get found, and you certainly wouldn't engage with them. So be a little bit more you, be a little bit more human, and you might just want to check your profiles too.
Wow. James, I love that. That was absolutely brilliant and utterly hilarious in parts as well. I really look forward to opening up and having a discussion around that. Lots and lots to explore after the good old deco. And it's over to you, sir.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Chris. And actually, before I start, I want to say that James has actually trained me as well, and it absolutely works. I can say right now, doing that definitely does work. But I've got a couple of slides just to kind of show you a couple of things that I'll be talking about from the paid perspective of LinkedIn. So what I wanted to start with was just by outlining the three main points of why you can use it and why it's beneficial for people to use. And that's actually, again, kind of building on what James has said, using this more personal orientated approach is actually what you want to be doing for B2B. People more see that as a B2C approach, but that's not true at all. The second part is actually investing in good content, decent content, whether it is just a simple post or whether it is a whole webinar or a podcast or some massive white paper. And then finally, actually managing to integrate that into the rest of your marketing activity and where that sits. So what I quite like is showing people this. This is actually the LinkedIn platform. And these are the different kind of categories that you can target when you're using this kind of B2B company approach, targeting by company size, company industry, which isn't bad. It's fine. It's okay. But think about some of the companies out there and how many people are in them and in different departments. If you're going to, like us, target people that are in marketing departments, targeting a whole company of, let's say, 10,000 staff, how many of them are really going to be in marketing? Probably not all of them. So that's a lot of wasted spend right there. What we would advise is actually using this approach, a more personal approach. What you can do is target individuals on LinkedIn by their job function, their job seniority, even their title, their exact title. So what you need to be doing is finding out who in these companies, the exact person, the role, the function that is going to be deciding whether that company is going to work with you, whether they're going to partner with you, whether they're going to hire you, whatever it may be, and actually targeting them. What you can then do to add this kind of extra level is by layering the two together, getting both the industry that you want to be targeting, the size of company perhaps, along with those job seniorities and the functions within them. Here's just an example that we've used in the past for some of our stuff, targeting people within insurance, within fintech, that are in marketing capacities of manager or higher seniority in companies of 50 or more people. It's again, that for us, we see that still as kind of broad as well. You can get even more targeted than that. Because what this does is it means that you're not showing to a billion people. You don't need to, not in the slightest. You just need to show to everyone that is going to buy from you. One of our clients was trade extensions, and we found out that actually there were only 4,000 people that could buy their product. Only 4,000 clients in the world. So if we showed to even one more than that, then that was wasted budget. So what we did was we found those exact people and we specifically targeted just them. So we knew that everyone we were going to hit was going to be a potential customer. One thing that we do like to compare to, and that's why I like, this is actually the front page of a book. It's a fantastic book. It's a bit of a joke, and it's just a load of different, I guess, what we would today call GIFs and memes. But it really does highlight how you could have the biggest billboard on the Hammersmith flyover. Tens of thousands of people will see it every day. But how many of them really are your customers? How many of them really are going to buy from you? We can guarantee with LinkedIn ads that there isn't going to be any wasted spend on masses of people. It is going to be all very useful and get you the best ROI. The second part, as I talked about, was making sure you've got this high quality, what we call blockbuster content. And the first part of this is to make sure you actually appeal to your audience, making sure that you're giving them what they want, making sure you're giving them what's relevant to them. If we're selling a marketing service potentially, then we want to make sure that we're actually giving people what gives them the benefit of marketing. We want to make sure that we're hitting ROI, we're hitting revenue, we're hitting sales, those things that people want to see. We're solving that problem for them. So it makes them get engaged with you and keep wanting to get engaged with you. And one thing that we found really, really handy, one thing that has proven to work, is by using leaders in these spaces. Let's say, for example, you wanted to do a podcast on, I don't know, LinkedIn. Potentially you'd get James Potter, the LinkedIn man, to come on with you. You want to get thought leaders in your space, in that space, to come on with you. We want people to really feel that value as well, so that you're not just helping them in the very specific way, but you can then give them that extra support that they need. And I think support is something that people really are looking for. That word in particular, support, not sales, serving, not sales. That's really important today more than ever, and really has shown where value is in the last year. I think that final point that I wanted to bring back to is very much looking at your marketing funnel, looking at how you're engaging with people at the top, at the middle, and the bottom. What is it that is drawing them to you? What is it that's keeping them engaged with you? And then ultimately, what is generating that sale? And LinkedIn is a really fantastic platform to utilize all the way through this. You can give them that exciting piece of content that really gets that engagement and awareness at the top. And you can keep remarketing to them. You can keep engaging with those same people that engage with you. And you almost start a discussion. It comes back to this point of P2P, person to person, not business to business. You're not talking to a corporate nameless face. You're talking to a person, and you've got to treat them like people. And as James said, in your profiles, making sure they've got you in them, your personality, making sure that your ads as well have that same personality, have a personality of some kind that really recognizes that you're talking to a person all the way through this. And I guess kind of making sure that you are, in the end, able to actually talk to them in some respect. So this is an incredibly complicated slide. It obviously looks, there's a lot of stuff in here, but actually, when you break it down, it is really simple. It is the repetition of one single process. Grabbing someone's attention, taking them someplace relevant, and then showing them more content that's relevant, and just going through that same process. And that is all you need to do. It is really that simple. Keep generating decent, valuable, relevant content, and keep remarketing it to this audience that are engaging with you, and making sure that you consistently do that, and that your content is always doing this. It's easy to just have one piece of content that you keep blasting out. That's not relevant. That is relevant at one time, but it's not always going to be. So you need to keep updating. So ultimately, coming back to those 3 points and how they can help you, really, even though you may be doing B2B marketing, you want to adopt a more P2P approach that may seem like a more customer B2C approach, but it really is useful on LinkedIn and actually gets you a narrower target and less wasted budget. Then focusing on making that content really blockbuster, so it delivers what the client actually wants. So it keeps them in your funnel for longer, ultimately generating more sales. And finally, using LinkedIn throughout that whole process, really adopting this personal style to get you that better ROI in the end.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Deco. Tons of value in there, and opening up discussion now, and absolutely more than happy to field absolutely any questions, quite frankly, to the LinkedIn man, James Potter, and of course, Deco, David Cooper, our marketing manager here at Fountain. And James Potter, I'm going to go to you first, if that's okay, sir. Sure. I really want to really home in on a particular point around the personality of a LinkedIn profile.
Yep.
About the mistakes that people make. But what I want to ask you is, why do you think people are not showing their personality on their profile? Do you think it's a mindset thing, or do you think it's a technical thing with LinkedIn? What's the sort of the happy medium there?
Okay, I think it's a combination of things. People's perception of LinkedIn is it's a formal business-like place where there is a perception that there is no place for personality. There's also a piece that people are naturally uncomfortable writing about themselves. And, if you are one of those people that's uncomfortable writing about yourself, just simply use these words. My clients tell me, speech marks, and then you can write anything you like and you'll be comfortable. What makes it even worse, quite fascinatingly, is the people in marketing and sales. They very rarely talk about themselves. They only ever talk about their business and the company and other people. So having to write about yourself, for some people, is quite hard. But if you stop and think for a moment, the feedback you get from clients, or if not, ask the clients, why do they like working with you? Ask your colleagues constructively, why do they like working with you? It won't be because you've got a badge, a certificate, or a qualification. It will be personality and style.
That's a really, really good take, James, actually. And DK, I will go to you, but just before I do, I think that one of my sort of big things around LinkedIn is trying to effectively use it to speed up the process between prospect and customer. And I think you can massively do that on LinkedIn by incorporating personality, because it's the old know, like, and trust, isn't it? They probably know you, they probably trust you, but do they like you? And I think you can really get that across on your LinkedIn profile. Is that fair to say, James?
There's even more than that to it. So there's actually some research been done where if you just look to do interactions with random people, it takes 24 interactions before they'll become a client using your language. If I'm going to go on LinkedIn looking for clients, I am looking for the potential clients that my existing network already know. Because if you're getting introduced to a client, the number of interactions drops to 2.
Wow.
So if you want to have 24 steps in your sales pipeline, then try shouting at people. If you want to have 2 steps in your sales pipeline, try having a real network and talking to people.
Great point, James. DK, what's your take on showing personality on your LinkedIn profile? Because something I've observed from you since you're training with James is that since you've shown more personality on your LinkedIn profile, not just in terms of how it looks and feels, but also the content you're producing, you seem to have got more engagement. Is that a fair statement to make?
100%. Yes, it definitely has. And I think that what's so brilliant about it is that it's not just meaningless likes. It's not, I guess, what some of those complainers would be calling Facebook likes. It really is meaningful engagement, and I think one important part of that is conversation. Instead of liking things, instead of celebrating things with the click of a button, write something. Actually put the time in to show someone you've put the time in to really read what they've said. You've thought about it and then given a response. And for me, it's led to so many meaningful conversations with people, that are in my network, in sort of the peripherals of my network through other people, and complete randomers as well. It really does help kind of all levels of that networking.
In terms of, great point, DK, and in terms of generating leads and sales through LinkedIn, which is, of course, what this webinar is all about, what is the happy medium, would you say, James? Because I guess you don't want to go too heavy on sales in terms of your content, but at the same time, you don't necessarily want to be too fluffy. So if you were to say to someone, right, go away and start with this, what would you say? What is the right sort of tone to go with?
Okay, so it's interesting because even as you're asking me the question, you're saying, what do I put out there? What is my content? What do I say? Well, start with getting your house in order. Get your profile to look like you, act like you, talk like you. Get your network around you to be real. Your network says a lot about you, If you think of LinkedIn like a room full of people, if you walk into that room looking to talk to me and I'm talking to these 2 people and they're lovely, I'm probably a lovely chap. If I'm talking to these 5 people and you think they're all prats, fools, or idiots, guess what I am? LinkedIn's got mechanisms to support that with things like recommendations, endorsements, but actually you talking about the fact that you're good at stuff will be a good start. In terms of the salesiness, let's get real. No one walks into a room full of people and goes, buy my stuff. All right. Very few people walk into a room full of people and go, buy my stuff, because they're going to get hit. We talk about what we've done to help other people. We talk about things anecdotally. We talk about how pleased we are that someone's got a great result. Well, try doing that on LinkedIn. Try being a little bit less overtly salesy. If you're overtly sales, what happens? Your client builds barriers really quickly. You can use your relationships to go round the barriers. There won't be any. You can use conversation to bring the barriers down. Be a bit less salesy. It'll work wonders.
Yeah, totally agreed with that. And I think actually a big part of this is that a lot of people are focusing on creating their own content, but actually another thing is actually adding value to others' posts. So spending some time engaging and giving value on their feed, right? James, is that fair? So, showing your personality.
Talk to people.
Exactly. It's social media at the end of the day. And James, there is something that I really want to ask you about, which is private messages. Because of course we've all received spam messages in terms of
all the time.
Trying to sell stuff on LinkedIn, right?
Yep.
But a lot of people will be watching this back or live right now that will be thinking, well, okay, but how do I go about that? What is the best sort of level to that? Because you want, of course, to sell stuff, but then at the same time, you don't want to come across as salesy and get removed the connection. So what's the best method for that?
Okay, so there's a whole heap of dimensions to that question, actually. So firstly, let's deal with the people sending you a spammy message, all right? It's always going to happen. It's like cold email. We all get them, yeah? The difference is on LinkedIn, if someone sends you a spammy message, go to the top right-hand side corner where there's 3 grey dots, hit the word report and report it as spam. Because LinkedIn puts countermeasures against people very, very quickly if they're seen to be spammed. People don't realize how much control they have. Think like your client, all right? If you're going to send someone a message, how are you going to read it? How are you going to be on the receiving end? Because that's what you've got to deal with. I've never forgotten talking to the partner of a big law firm who gets 40 in-mail messages a day, all right? And ironically, I'd sent him an in-mail message, all right, which is why he was talking to me. And I said to him at the time, you've got my sympathy. Look, this is how you report in-mail messages as spam. At least enjoy the fact you're getting harassed. And he was ever so grateful. Now, the irony is, I got to have a conversation with him, not having any sales approach at all. I was talking about something completely different. But on the back of that conversation, he was going, oh, well, that's really interesting, James. Thank you for that. You should come and have a chat in the office because we could probably. It's not sales first. It's back to Deco's point. You're dealing with people. Never forget you're dealing with people. Think about the people you're trying to sell to and sell to them as people, not as prospects or targets. They're individuals. You can look at profiles. You can find out what they're talking about. You can find out who you know that knows them. Think about leveraging some of those relationships you've got as opposed to just running through a door and beating someone over the head with a stick.
That's brilliant. And Deco, just on that point, I think this is where it's important for people to think about the full funnel approach to LinkedIn, particularly on the paid side of things, right? Because you want to be making sure you are still talking to them with personality in that side of things as well. So it's not just about private messages and your organic content, but it's important to also talk to them in their language through paid ads as well. And that's an important part of the process, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think there's one thing that we need to be doing is generally getting as many touch points in as possible. As James mentioned, you could have up to 25 if they're a completely cold lead. So if you can get those points in, if you can get those touch points and speaking points with them, then you're making that process easier. As well, what it does is, well, one thing that I think it definitely does in kind of enmeshing the two together is you could provide them with some piece of a white paper or a report, a survey that you've done or that you think is interesting, which then leads into that organic conversation and leads into the engagement there and the as I say, that kind of organic commenting that means that you can comment back and you start a kind of narrative there that other people can join in with. And it's a method of kind of supporting what you're doing on LinkedIn organically.
Yeah, great point. James, do you agree with Deco on that point?
Yeah, I do. And different parts of a business, even different functions of a business, will use LinkedIn in different ways.
Mm.
You know, if you're starting with an audience that you don't know, advertising has its place. You know, you're getting your brand in front of people. It's raising the awareness of it. Equally, the team in the business have their place by talking about what they're doing so that people are aware of it. But then if you've got relationships you can leverage, you can jump sections of the funnel by leveraging the relationship to get the referral. If not, it takes time and effort. And you just got to put a little bit of time into LinkedIn. Oh, while we're talking about time on LinkedIn, it really amazes me how much time people spend on LinkedIn. You know, the average user's 10 minutes and 44 seconds a day. I come across people that are spending hours each day. I don't know how they do it. I don't do it. I spend about an hour a week. I've got a life. I've got a job. I don't want people there too much because it's like going, look at me. I've got no work. Weird.
I agree with that. And I think there's one thing that's really interesting is how you kind of said it. Different people use LinkedIn differently. So if you can reach these people in these different ways, they're going to react differently. And there may be certain people that react really well to email messages. There may be people that react really badly. There may be people that really like ads, but some that really don't. So making sure you've got this I guess, diversity in your portfolio of LinkedIn really does help make sure that you're engaging everyone that you possibly can in the way that they want to be engaged with.
Do you think, gents, that people are still completely undervaluing LinkedIn, that, for example, aren't outward facing? Because, for example, if I work in accounts, say, for example, you know, I keep myself to myself. I might not be, you know, out prospecting. But how important is it, James, to still customize your profile, make sure it looks crisp? The amount of company pages that I go on and I look through their employees and I look at it and the profile's off brand, or again, you speak about spelling mistakes or a real lack of content. And how important is it, James, for even, you know, inward facing members of your team to still publish their own content, have their own personal strategy that actually contributes to the wider marketing project for the business?
Okay, I think the problem for a lot of people is they think LinkedIn is a tool to be used at a certain point, or they think it is just another one of the social media mix. LinkedIn is a bit different, all right? Think of it as the digital business equivalent of you. The most common use of LinkedIn is actually due diligence. Are you the person I think you are? Do you do what I think you do? Are you my sort of person? Do I want you to do my accounts? Am I going to phone you back? Or it might be, am I giving you the finance for your car? Or are you the sort of business I want to buy? It depends on the people using it. You just need to look like you. Whether you're using it for whatever outcome you're trying to drive, just look like you and make sure you're alive.
Deco, what's your thoughts on that?
I couldn't really agree more, to be honest. James has really hit the nail on the head with that one. There's no simpler words I can say to express the exact same thing.
And another question that I want to ask as well, and perhaps for you to start with, James, is I personally, my observations are a lot of people are hiding behind company accounts, but they don't really realize that the organic reach on personal LinkedIn accounts right now on LinkedIn, in my opinion, is probably better than any other social media network, full stop, right? So what better time to get started on LinkedIn? All of the motivation should surely be there for personalities on LinkedIn to use it as a lead gen tool, because you can reach so many people at the moment, can't you, James?
Okay, so I think yes is the answer. People hide behind company pages because they are worried about saying the wrong things, or they don't know what to say. The fear is massive. Despite the fact, if you bump into them in the street and say, "What are you up to?" they go, "I'm doing this." I think it's the act of having to type it. The impact of LinkedIn at a personal level is 10 times higher than that of a business page. People don't find businesses interesting. You know, your average company on LinkedIn goes, "I'm a company and I'm fabulous," or "I've got a new employee or a new product or service." And that's it. Whereas we're all interested in individuals. They have experience, they have things impacting their life, they have perspectives that we find interesting, and we engage with them more. That engagement keeps us front of mind. And from a sales perspective, that's critical. You know, you can start that journey by someone seeing an advertisement in LinkedIn in Deco's conversation. You know, people think, oh, that brand, and then they go off and look at the brand and the people. People make LinkedIn work. As much as people want it to be a company or want it to be some form of magic because they're there, it's not. You need to talk to people. You need to do some stuff.
Deco, your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think one thing is always to make sure that you're being kind of, I guess, open and real about who you are and why you're there, why you're on LinkedIn, what your passions are as well. It's already, interestingly, actually, before I had my training with James, my one big thing is I love talking about morality in marketing. And not once had I ever had a platform to really talk about this on since James's training, because I've been talking about it more and talking with people about it more. I've now had the opportunity to be on 2 different podcasts to talk about that in such a short space of time as well. So it really does have that effect of letting people know who you are and what you're about as an individual, just as much as your professional life and the company you work for, and really gets them asking questions about you more. So again, it comes back to that engagement, person to person engagement aspect.
Gents, we'll start to wrap up now, but I'm going to put you both under a healthy bit of pressure here. If I was to say to you, right, give someone the action now, what do they need to do today to improve how they increase their lead gen opportunity on LinkedIn? What actions would you give them? And James, I'll field that question to you first, if you don't mind.
Okay, so I'm going to do a visual reference for this one, and I'll do an audio reference as well for those listening to the podcast. This is how the average person promotes themselves on LinkedIn and the great value that they represent.
Brilliant.
Now, for those of you in the podcast, you might have noticed I said absolutely nothing, because that's what a lot of people do on LinkedIn. They say absolutely nothing. Just have a thought going away from today. Can you, hand on heart, tell me what all of your connections do, the sorts of people that they help, the markets they operate in? And if you can't, why do you expect them to remember you?
Brilliant. And James, I must say, I was a bit worried about when you were going to come up for air then. You were down for quite a long time. Very, very impressive, very impressive. And Deco, what actions would you give our webinar audience today?
I think from a paid perspective, it's making sure you've got the content infrastructure. Make sure that you have stuff that is actually worth talking about. And as an individual, you'll definitely be able to talk about stuff. But from a paid perspective, make sure that you yourself, whatever position you may be in, your company is providing valuable content for your customer database, your clientele. At the end of the day, that is what is driving a lot of the conversations that generally happen in a lot of social media, but definitely in LinkedIn as well. And it's what's going to really attract people and keep them engaged with you as well. It's not just an awareness piece at the top. It is also that consideration piece throughout that customer funnel. So making sure that you have that. At the end of the day, it's something that we did for our client Trade Extensions, and it tripled their size. It was absolutely phenomenal. It was cited as one of the 3 major aspects in them being acquired for $45 million. It really did count for a lot. So it may seem like a big upfront cost. It may not seem like a big upfront cost to some people at all, but making sure that you just have that constant stream of relevant content.
Fantastic, Deco. Right, that is it for today's webinar. The more you LinkedIn, the more you get out. I'd just like to say a massive thank you to both yourself, James, and yourself as well, Deco, for sharing your insights with us today, and also everyone on the planet. I really appreciate your time. And I must emphasize this to anyone watching this now. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to get in contact with James or Deco. Obviously, do it on LinkedIn. You're more than welcome to do that. Or either you could also send them a tweet. They are at Deco_twit, lovely handle there, Deco, and also at the LinkedIn Man on Twitter. Or alternatively, why not give them an email, david.cooper@fountainpartnership.co.uk and james@thelinkedinman.com. Thank you very, very much for watching today's Fountain webinar, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon.